Hey, welcome to edsguitarlessons.com. Today I'm going to do a redo a video that I had done earlier, and I seem to have gotten a lot of confusion is what my point was trying to be. And basically what I want to compare is the sounds from solid state transistors, resistors, capacitors, versus the sound of tubes. Okay? The Helix by line 6 has no tubes. It's all transistors, capacitors, resistors, and things very electronic, okay, in nature. The old style that everyone likes is the tubes. The old Fenders, twin reverbs, Marshalls, they work off tubes, vacuum tubes, that basically heaters that are used to create sound. There's a nice warm sound to tubes, and that's why people tend to like to go to tubes. And the solid state usually is very pure, and it's just a very sharp sound. It doesn't really have a creamy sound to it. And so my point of this video is to basically compare the new technology that they have that makes solid state type equipment compared to a tube. And for the example, I'm going to be using a AVH 5150 3 amplifier, which is all tube. It's a tube amp, okay? It's not solid state. And that's the coveted sound that purists want to emulate. And I think we're dealing with the Ford and Chevy type thing. It's 6 of one, half a dozen the other anymore. And I know people will disagree with even that statement. But what I'm trying to produce is, does this amp with tubes in it compare, or is it comparable or not comparable to the new technologies that they've come up with at line 6? There's other places that emulate tube amps, and by emulate, they make these solid state pieces of equipment that have no tubes in them, and they're trying to emulate and sound like tubes. So it's kind of, they're trying to cross over to sound like the vintage sounds that you get from a tube amplifier. So I think the only fair way to do this demonstration is I have to get out of this just the pure sound of this. And what I've done is basically I'm running this device, the Helix, out of a solid state crate amp, and there's no reverb, there's no delay, there's nothing on it. It's just a pure clean sound, and I think, and it's solid state, so it is solid state, and this is solid state, so there's no tubes involved, okay? And that's my point. And the idea here with the crate is, if crate does anything, it amplifies. It amplifies a pure clean sound of a voice, of a guitar, what have you, purely. I mean, it's an electronic sound, but it's a pure sound, pure and clean. Okay, so I think that's what we're trying to accomplish, is to look at the Helix, listen to the sound of it. That's all we want. We don't want a tube. I don't want it connected to a tube, because I'm trying to show you that line 6 and other manufacturers that try to emulate tube amplifiers, they've come a long way. And from what I understand, this particular device is built upon all the knowledge and experience line 6 has had through their pod series of emulating or copying the sound of tube amplifiers, and this seems to be the granddaddy of them all at this point. And so they've gone down to component level on these line 6 Helixes, you know, an inch at a time, going through the circuitry of a tube amp and measuring resistances and and capacities and everything that you would have to do to kind of figure out the voltages and signals that you need to produce a sound like a tube. So that's my point, is I'm trying to see, does this sound like a tube amplifier without any, it has no tubes, okay? So that's my comparison, is a solid state device, does it sound like a tube amplifier? That is my whole point of this demonstration. And I'm going to be running through the EVH straight through. I'll try to get the settings as close as I can, comparatively speaking, you know, and you'll make the judgment. But I don't want to go through the back. I don't want to go through the front. I mean, you know, I want to just, we're just listening to this amp as is, because it's a tube amp, and that's what we're trying to compare. The tube amp to solid state transistors, capacitors, and resistors. Can line 6 make a device out of transistors, capacitors, resistors that sound like tubes? That's the point of this demo. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.